Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 172.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on professional club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques. I create exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores. Very few things about professional club fitting are what I would call cookbook. Perhaps nothing illustrates this more than finding ways to help tall golfers play with clubs that will help them play their best golf. Fitting for these types of players is way more than just giving them longer clubs and adjusting the lie angles of their clubs. My friend Dan Connelly, who invented the True Length Technology athletic address position fitting approach, has had a lot of success with golfers the past few years. I reached out to Dan a few weeks ago to get his input about what clubs can best help a 6'3" tall golfer, and you'll learn a lot about what I found out from Dan in this fascinating interview.
Taking your game to new heights. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Hello, this is Tony Wright with episode 172 of the Golf Improvement Podcast. I appreciate Dan Connelly, creator of the True Length Technology athletic address position fitting approach, for coming back on my podcast. Dan's helped me numerous times with questions on applying, actually the abbreviation is TLT for golfers. And today's podcast spawned out of a recent help request that I think is going to be interesting to talk about. So Dan, thanks for being back and thanks for all the times that you helped me too. I really appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be back on, Tony. You know me, I love the game of golf, and it's a passion that goes back to 20 years ago, probably about when we would have met. So
something like that. That's right. We don't want to date ourselves too bad. So there you go. Well, we did an interview about 4 years ago, episode 81. Share some of the most important things related to professional fitting that have happened to you since then in your business life, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest difference is, like, the math model still has not changed. I'm still 100% believer that golf clubs should be built to a math-modeled program where every club is mathematically correct relating the lie angle and the length, forcing a singular address position. So all of the talk today is about single-length golf clubs. Well, they accomplish the same thing as what True Length does, except True Length still uses variable lengths and variable lies, but mathematically correct. So the biggest thing that's happened over the years probably came about 3 years ago. I did a video promotion with some of my taller golfers, and it really started to confirm things that taller golfers really do need longer clubs. Like, I probably had 6 or 7 guys, 6'6" was the little guy. And that month just helped cement things in from the feedback that I got from those guys, that they could not believe the difference. Like, just like yourself, for years, we were never taught to build, pitching wedges longer than 36.5 inches. You simply upright them and make that tall player feel a little bit better. But over the years, I began to discover that that's not the right way to fix for a tall player. Like, I hang out with a couple of guys that are 6'8", and for years I watched these guys play, looked like they stole a 10-year-old's golf clubs,
Yeah.
And finally decided to address it. So I had one of them come to my shop, and we did a fitting right up to Series 15, which, as you know, gets wedges that are over 39 inches. And, just like the teachings that we had all those years was you can't do that. Nobody can play a 39-inch wedge. Well, this guy could not believe the difference. Like, for the first time in his life, he actually stood what he felt athletic with a wedge. He was always okay with a 4-iron, a 3-iron, or a 2-iron kind of thing because those clubs fit those guys or get closer anyway. But all of a sudden, I'm handing him a wedge that's 4.5 inches longer than the one that was in his bag. And it didn't take long at all, and he was 100% behind what I was doing. So that even opened my eyes because I hadn't had many chances to work with big guys like that. And then all of a sudden it started happening where phone call after phone call about, 6'8", 6'7", 6'6", 280-pound guys,
Oh, wow.
These guys, yeah, big men that have never been able to play, guys that have quit golf because their +1 or +2-inch golf clubs just didn't fit them, and wanted to get back in the game. And especially now with COVID, it's one of the few games that we can do. So these big guys sought me out over the last few years, and data proves that, these guys are playing far better golf, less worry about back hurts and injuries, playing out of an athletic address position, just like myself at 5'10", that's what we need to be doing for everybody, whether you're a little petite woman or a giant of a man.
Yeah. Well, and, I mentioned in the introduction, too, that, TLT is not really a length fitting system, but it's an athletic address position fitting system. And we did talk about this, 4 years ago, but just a little bit of the basics of, what was your light bulb when you started this, when you first did it? And I don't know that anybody else has really, other than people adopting what you've done, have done anything like you've done with True Length technology.
Well, that's the thing. I've got followers all over the world that use my fitting system. I've got 18 countries now, and a lot of advanced professional club fitters that have adapted my system with great success. Like when I started it, I have a Series 0, which basically relates to a 30 wrist measurement. Well, that's a little wee person, like a little petite woman. And then the other end of the scale is my Series 15, which relates to the giants of the men. Well, those wedges are, a difference between a 34-inch wedge at Series 0 and a 39.5-inch wedge for a Series 15. And we were never taught that you could do that. All of the teachings that I ever attended, the club making academies, the club fitters associations, all these things, it was something that just never seemed to get addressed what I thought properly. And so I sort of changed it. Like a lot of people do feel that TLT is a wrist to floor. Like my Series 6 relates to a wrist to floor of 36. A Series 2 relates to a wrist to floor of 32. That's the starting point, and that's all it is. So as you get bigger, as weight goes up, even how you hold your hands, a person that holds their hands close to their body versus a person that holds their hands like a single axis, like Mo Norman kind of thing, they could be exactly the same size men, but their clubs could easily be, over an inch or more difference just by the way they address. So I'm not trying to force anybody into one position, but I am trying to force you to be athletic. Then if you want to hold your hands single axis, that's fine. If you want to hold your hands close, that's fine. These are the different scenarios that take away from it being a simple wrist to floor system. That's not even close to what it is.
Yeah.
And it all does come out in the fitting when you actually put, like my fitting system has pitching wedges at 64 degrees, 7 irons at 61 degrees, and 4 irons at 58 degrees. And I have them in every one of my series. So I can put a 4, a 7, and a pitching wedge in a little petite woman's hands, or the same thing in a giant's hands. and basically get them standing athletically correct. But their clubs are 4.5 5 inches difference to each other. You know, the old women play -1, big men play +1, you know, or we upright them, you know, as the case with your player there a month or so ago.
Yeah. Well, if we see, you know, anybody I think I've ever seen who comes in that is somebody that needs to play longer than length clubs, almost always they've been put in something that's more upright. I don't think I've ever had anybody come in where they, you know, they wouldn't have seen your system, I guess, but they might come in, you know, 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degrees upright. When in general is that the right approach, if ever, and when isn't it? And what impact does that assumption have on the ability of the golfer to create that athletic golf swing?
Well, I've had players come to me with custom-built sets that, you know, pitching wedges, you know, we're at 67, 68 degrees, you know, 4 degrees upright, you know, and 4 irons were at 60, you know, 4 degrees, you know, basically 4 or 5 degrees upright. And these players still could not stand athletic. In fact, everything looked so crowded to them. You know, they trying to get that club so close to their feet to allow that 68-degree pitching wedge to sit right. And their misses were always left, you know, like for a right-handed golfer, you know, which is that toe-up condition that you know, we've always learned the face is what controls the direction of the ball flight. And, you know, these are just to the old methods. It's what I was taught when I started, that, okay, a tall player, we need to upright his clubs. It's the only way you can play them. Well, I've gone where now I don't believe that that's the right way to go. My tall players still only play a 64 or 65-degree pitching wedge, but I add the length to it so they can stand athletic. And other people have come to me and said, well, that club's going to get swing weight very heavy. Well, this guy that comes to you, he's a 6'8" giant of a man that couldn't care less that the club has a F swing weight. It's okay. So it is a bit head heavy, but you need to stiffen the shaft. So, you know, you go to like a XXX shaft and build this guy at the length where he's allowed to all of a sudden stand athletically correct. He doesn't care that the club weighs a little bit more. Like, you know, he swings a 20-ounce hammer, I swing a 14. You know,
yeah.
It does not matter to him. I've never had one of these big players ever come back and go, these clubs are too heavy for me. They couldn't care less. You know, those go back to old myth that, you know, we got to play a D2 swing weight. Well, how do you make a 39.5-inch pitching wedge to a D2 swing weight? Well, you can't. You'd have to have drilled holes in it. You'd have to, you know, cut the hosel down. You'd have to remove metal that you structurally need. And so I've sort of pulled away from that. And I let the results talk for itself, that, you know, these tall players just all of a sudden, they're standing tall with a pitching wedge for the first time in their life. And they're going, damn, where's this been all my life, you know? And that's the key.
Now, you know, it was interesting, you know, and we're going to dive into the guy that, you know, that sort of spawned this thing. I mean, his irons, his 7-iron was something like, I don't know, 3 or 4 degrees upright. And so I did a notch ball test just to see, right? And when I do the notch ball test, it suggests it ought to be more upright. And I thought, now, wait a minute. That just doesn't make any sense, okay? Because I know, and I think I shared with you the picture of him at Impact, and he's, you know, even more up because that's what's forcing him to make reasonable contact, okay? But so I shared data with you of a 6'3" golfer who'd been playing a 7-iron at about 38 3/8, 3 degrees upright from standard, and you suggested he should be playing a 7-iron that's a little longer and about 62-degree lie angle, which, in fact, he's going to pick up from me tomorrow, build a test club for him to hit. So what a difference. But you talked about a lot of little different things, and when I first reached out to you, you said, send me a picture of him with his pitching wedge down the line. And I think that was probably one of the key things that drove you to suggesting what the specs were, right? When you saw how he set up with it.
Yeah, like he's a little bit of a bigger man. At 6'3", I think he had a 38 wrist measurement. And, you came to me and go, well, that should be a Series 8. Well, a Series 8 would put his 7-iron at about 37.93, which is close to what his was, but he was 4 more degrees upright, and it's just that crowded condition, like when he swung the golf club, he was in a completely different position than when he set up with the golf club. And it's because just his size, there's no way he could do an athletic swing with that golf club the way it was. So he's tried to figure out how to compensate.
To get the club kind of sitting up. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you look at him, just nothing looks right. You look at a 5'10" player who's set up, with a 7-iron, they look athletic, like, boy, that guy can really swing through. He's on plane. And all of a sudden you bring in your 6'3" guy and nothing looks coordinated, and it's because he's figured out how to compensate to probably still play in the 90s or whatever, that, still got reasonable game, but it's all from compensation. He's figured out how to make those clubs work. So that's why I was telling you, we need to actually go longer, not shorter like you were thinking, and less upright so he can actually swing that club on plane. And a lot of guys talk about like launch monitors. Well, I could put the fella with that club on a launch monitor, and he may not even be able to hit it today. But 300 golf balls from now, he's going to be praising you for allowing you to let him stand athletic for the first time in his life and swing on plane, without swinging through his toes, and just trying to get that club into position. Just nothing looked comfortable to me in that picture that I've seen.
Yeah. So it's really going to be fun tomorrow to get out with him. He's been away on vacation, and like I said, I did build him a 7-iron at the specs that you talked about, and but it probably will take him some time to do that because he's so used to setting up and swinging to make a compensation to get the ball to come close to going straight, right?
Yep. Now that could be true, or he's going to just take one swing and look at it and go, Tony, thank you.
Well, that would be the most delightful thing. That's right.
Well, when I do my fitting sessions, we do not even hit a single golf ball. All I care about is getting the man athletic.
Yeah.
Fitters like yourself that have used, labels and hit launch monitors and all this for all these years. It's a method of trying to get the best thing that'll fit them. That, still it comes within the standards of what we've all been taught. Well, I believe I've sort of broken the mold as to that approach, and all I care about is getting them standing correct. Like I've handed golfers 6'6", 6'8" guys this 39.5-inch pitching wedge, and they've stood there at first and go, nothing feels right. I said, well, let's just stand here and talk, and you swing. We're not hitting balls. I just want you to brush the grass. I want you to do it for the next 10 minutes while we talk. And, take one swing every 30 seconds, whatever feels right. Don't rush it. Just let yourself become one with it. So after 10 minutes, I hand him back his pitching wedge that he came to me with. And he goes, I can't even figure out how to get to the ground with this club. Well, that's the club you've been playing for 10 years, And all of a sudden, that 39.5-inch pitching wedge, nothing feels good anymore. And he hasn't even struck a ball. I still don't even care about that. I'm going to tell him, go, your first round of golf, you're going to get it. Third round of golf, you think I've ruined your golf game because you're still reverting back to old.
Sure.
You're going back to old habits. We've got muscle memory of 30 plus years for some golfers that, have never been allowed to play athletic. And the fifth round of golf, all of a sudden he gets it. I can stand tall with a pitching wedge. I've never been allowed to do that. and this is where the difference comes in, is when you're allowing these guys to play a club that actually fits them. Just like a little petite woman. She's been choking down in her clubs for 3 years. All of a sudden, I hand her a wedge that's 34 inches long, and she goes, "Oh, this feels good." I hand her a 4-iron that's 36 inches long. Just, what? A 4-iron feels right? I don't have to choke down 3 inches, and these are the scenarios that, it's all about getting you standing athletic and keeping you there. So single-length golf clubs do that, yes. But I believe there's way too many traditionalists in golf where they don't want to play single length. I struggled with it myself. I couldn't play a 36.5-inch 5-iron. Just nothing felt right.
Yeah.
And so with TLT, though, I can remain in my singular athletic address position and play every iron in my bag from one address position. Yeah, the ball gets closer to my feet with a wedge and further from my feet with my 4-iron. But my actual address, you could come and replace those 2 clubs in my hands. The ball will be 3 or 4 inches away further with a 4, but I'll be in the exact same position myself. So I get to learn one swing plane. The only difference is my wrist position, holding because of the lie angle difference. But every club is held exactly the same distance from the butt cap, and you just get to continually swing on plane. Ball flight becomes very consistent. Pond center hits become very consistent. And, all of a sudden your game has come around where, during the fitting session where I didn't even strike a ball. I've had guys that refuse to come see me because they tell them we're not going to hit golf balls. Well, that's their business. That's in my eyes, a bit old school, they're trying to fit the golf club, or you to the golf club, or the golf club to you. I want the two of you just to be in sync.
Yeah, it would be interesting tomorrow. Maybe I will. I hadn't thought about the concept of just letting him swing for about 10 minutes or so as a start. I'm sure he's going to want to immediately go bomb, and and hit it. But
yep.
maybe that just helping him to say, hey, let's step back, because there's not going to be likely to be an instantaneous, oh yeah, maybe there will, like you said, but give it a chance.
Never held
give
a
it a
golf
chance.
club to that spec ever.
No, that's right.
He never held one singular golf club to that specification before. I'm not sure how he could expect to go up and just pure shot after shot.
Yeah.
He's never been in that position.
Yeah.
So we need to allow him time to become comfortable and go, oh, this really does feel good. My back's no longer sore. I'm not at a 60-degree spine tilt. I'm at 35. Things just feel right. How's the weight? Oh, it feels a little heavier, but nothing bothers me, and that's where we go.
Now, do the taller guys tend to be at more like a 35-ish degree spine tilt, or is there no really measure of it?
My model's always said that, I've always said that I want golfers at about a 30 to 35 degree spine tilt. You look at any big, tall man playing a standard set of golf clubs, his spine tilt is probably 55 to 60 degrees, just so he can get the club to the ground. Or he's squatting and maintaining a little bit more of an upright position. Or he's doing a combination of the two things. But I never understood why. Give the man a taller club. He's a taller, bigger man. And yes, every designer of golf clubs designs to the same, plus or minus 2 grams of head weight for each iron, but that's always because they build them to the same specifications that, were back years and years ago when, Jack Nicklaus was designing clubs. Head weights are still basically the same thing, but it's about getting you standing taller, letting the player play from an athletic address.
Yeah. Now, are there any other, when I posed the questions to you and sent them to you, I said lie angle myths, but any other sort of club myths that you have seen that we haven't really talked about that you think before, that are worth talking about a little bit today?
Well, things like swing weight, like it depends what school you're from. Like, both me and you started with swing weight, and I was taught that you had to build a D2 swing weight or, that club isn't right. Well, it's impossible to build a D2 swing weight when you're dealing with real life head weights, which are designed for, a 36-inch pitching wedge. And all of a sudden you build it 39 inches. Well, that head is now, 28 grams too heavy?
Yeah.
So, it's just, we're dealing with still standards that you and me can't control. So things like swing weight, I need a D2 swing weight set. I simply tell my players that, sorry, you're not going to get that. That's an impossibility. And then, I've heard about this MOI theories. Can you build me like to an MOI number? Well, not really, because you're building to a club specification. I'm all about getting you athletic and letting you learn your new set of golf clubs from your new address position. And I want you to stay there. And everything I'm talking about is full swing shots.
Yeah.
When we get close around the green, yes, you still choke down 3 inches. You do whatever you got to do to make that ball do what you need it to do. But old thoughts like tall players need upright lie angles, short players need flat lie angles. Yes, to a degree, there is some rightness to that, but they also need the correct length related to that lie angle. So I may build a player with, like my standard has a 64-degree lie angle pitching wedge. But I may build a 66-degree pitching wedge for a tall player to keep his club length from getting crazy long. So by going upright 2 degrees, I've taken probably close to an inch off the length of that golf club. Well, now it's not an unwieldy club. It's not a 40-inch club, as a wedge. It's a 39-inch wedge. Well, that 1 inch can make a difference. And at 66, he's still going to be having that ball far enough in his feet. But in the specs you sent me from your player, almost every iron was at 66 or 67 degrees.
Yeah, that's right.
They were almost all identical lie angles with different lengths. Well, tell me mathematically how that gets you good ball direction. It doesn't. It's impossible.
That's for sure.
So that fella had to figure out how to adjust with every club slightly different than the next club. So he had 8 different swings going through his bag, trying to figure out how to make each one work. Well, what I'm trying to force you to do is give him clubs that allow him to stand in one position, one athletic position he's never been in before, and then let the math figure out the correct lie angle and length for that player to be in. So there is some truth to some of the old myths, but it's the system forced us to go too far. Like a 68-degree pitching wedge, I've never met anybody that could hit one.
Yeah,
just never feels right.
Pretty impossible. That's right. I recently.
Go
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you.
I've been excited though. One of the things that's a little possible now. I don't know if you've been looking at the new Washan, the 989s, but the head weights of those are a lot lighter, and it's pretty interesting.
Yes.
So that's a potential great option. I mean, you're never going to get things totally light, but they can be a great option for people that really need a lot longer clubs. I'm getting pretty excited about that as a potential for this particular guy.
Yep. Well, and that's true, and that's wonderful that Tom Wishon has gone ahead and done that. He's began to recognize some of the importance of this as well. And for taller players, because we're all taller now than we were 40 years ago. That seems to be a normal thing that exists now. So I do want to talk one other thing about Tom Wishon. His new EQ1s that have come out. That's his new single length set. Well, I built a set of those, but I didn't build them to single length. I built them where my 5 iron was 37.5 inches and my pitching wedge was 36.5 inches. So I've got about 0.15 of a length difference per club and about a half a degree lie angle change through each club. So I've broken the rule of single length, just so I can have a 5-iron that feels a little bit longer, or a 6-iron that doesn't feel, crazy short. So the nice thing with that is, though, those wedges now that come in at 268 grams, 274, something like that.
Yeah.
Those can be used to build for tall players as well. So I've used single length heads for 9-pitch gap and sand for a bunch of my tall players. So all of a sudden now I'm not playing a 300-gram sand wedge. I'm playing a 270 or whatever. And so you can reduce that swing weight a whole bunch.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It was never intent to be that way, but it's just something that actually fits the math model to a high degree. And because all of Tom's are basically designed around an 8-iron head weight, so a 9-pitch gap and sand at an 8-iron head weight, all of a sudden none of those clubs become crazy heavy anymore. So, there's hidden advantages to some of those designs.
I'll bet he didn't realize that when he did it. But, I have to say that, I've been experimenting with a set of single-length irons, and I find that the setup with that sand wedge at a longer length feels a lot better than I ever expected it to. I was really surprised by that.
Yeah, how tall are you?
6 foot.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Which means that your wedges should be longer. So, you're right. I believe that those will all of a sudden feel better. Like I'm 5'10" or 5'9", and I play a 36 3/4 inch wedge, but at an appropriate lie angle that mathematically feels right. And, but a taller player like you, and I know you've been squatting your whole life. So
That's
things
right.
like that allow you to get taller.
Yeah.
So if you turned your EQ set into what I did with, about a 1-inch difference between your long iron to your short iron, all of a sudden that 5-iron doesn't feel crazy short now.
Yeah.
Where your wedge no longer feels crazy long, like it's that balance point. And with Tom's weight ports, you can add 9 grams down in the hosel. You can add another 9 grams in the tip section. So you can adjust head weight by 18 grams with no problem whatsoever. The clubs bend well, so you can set the lie angles exactly where we want them. And it's a very successful program that has worked well for a bunch of my tall players.
That's neat. I'm glad we got to talk about that because I hadn't thought about that possibility. Well, that's great. Well, Dan, any other things you want to emphasize here at the end today? Gosh, I would love to get to work with more tall guys that just have no idea what they're missing. Maybe this will spur some of that. And I'm sure you've already talked about how you've done that with a lot of people. So, any other final words?
Yeah. Well, on my website, which is danscustomgolfshop.com, on there is some videos. On my homepage, there is a video that has a petite little, actually a little girl, I think she's a 9 or 10-year-old. And then I've got about a 5'6" gentleman and a 6'6" or 7 gentleman. And you get to see them all standing athletically correct. No one's choking down. No one's bent over to 64 degrees, or 60 degrees. So it does give players the chance to see an actual 6'6", 6'7" gentleman standing athletic with a wedge that all of a sudden looks normal to him. Without you knowing he's 6'7", he looks like a regular player. Where when I give him his own little wedge, nothing looks right. Nothing feels right. So those videos have really helped, drive the understanding, I guess. So everything I've always been about in this, since I've been a professional builder, is about getting you to stand athletic. And I know I do go against some of the rules with, no launch monitor, no hitting golf balls. But over the years, and I've had nothing but 5-star Google reviews, that this seems to be a very sound approach. And once you've had a chance to swing them enough times, and I do say 300 golf balls, that all of a sudden you're going to go, wow, what a difference. Now I can't go back and play that old set. I tried. I can't do it. Where I played it for 25 years or whatever. I've had comments from that And I've seen that in that 10-minute session that me and you just talked about.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to put longer clubs in a big, tall man's hands.
Now, by the way, about 2 minutes before I called you, I had first clicked on your website, and it was the website I'd seen forever. But then I re-clicked on it, and you've got a new website, don't you?
Yes, I rebuilt that a couple of years ago.
Oh, well,
I don't know
thought...
why, for some reason, sometimes computers don't upgrade, so you did a refresh.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there it was. But I've had a whole new website. A fellow in California helped me build this site. It's just amazing.
It for some reason I had the old one, but then when I looked at the new one, it does look amazing. So I'm going to make sure people go to that link when they look at the look at the podcast and listen to the podcast. And thanks for taking the time, and thanks for helping me. And I'm going to keep you up to date about what's going on with my friend. I think he's going to be really happy.
Yeah, I'm really anxious to hear it too, Tony. As I say, my success in the last 2 years has been so many tall players have sought me out, like from all over the world. I built a set for a fella in Scotland, 6'8", 280-pound gentleman.
Jeez,
just a monster of a man. But his plus 2-inch clubs hurt his back. He quit again. And so I built him a set, shipped him to Scotland, and heard nothing but positive back from him.
Well, that's great.
So these guys are getting the chance, but it's not old school methods. It's as I've told you before, I spent my whole life as a metrologist, which is the art of measurement, and high level measurement is all I've ever done. So when I started reviewing golf clubs, I thought this old school needs a big time refresh. And that's when I started working on it. And, this is 20 years later since I first introduced it in 2005, I guess, is when I introduced TLT.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for the time today, and hang in for just a second, and I'll turn the record button off. How about that? Take care, Dan.
Thanks, Tony.
The Golf Improvement Podcast is sponsored by Tony Wright and Game Improvement Golf. Tony creates exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores.
Dan, thanks for returning to my podcast to share your insights and success about ways to help tall golfers play their best golf. So, I did in fact build a demo club for the golfer we talked about in the interview. What's happened so far? Well, first I emphasized to him that it'll take time to adapt to this longer, heavier, and flatter lie angle golf club. The lie angle of this club is about 3 to 4 degrees flatter than the present 7-iron he's playing. That said, the first time I had him hit some shots, after at least 10 minutes of just swinging the club, he hit a large number of beautiful small draws, good ball flight, and his longer shot distances than he hit with his present 7-iron. So, a great work in progress. Learn more about Dan's True Length Technology fitting approach by clicking on the link in the show notes. My shout out today is, well, you're going to be surprised a little, again to Dan Connelly, because I'm so appreciative for all the time he took to help provide me with advice for the golfer I'm helping. I put a separate link in the show notes to a portion of his webpage where he talks specifically about a case study he shared for a 6'4" tall golfer. Thanks again, Dan. Well, that's it for today. In 2 weeks, I'll be talking with Emma Green, the tennis elbow queen. Emma's an accomplished physical therapist who's written a valuable new book, Tennis Elbow Relief, and she'll share strategies for golfers who are suffering from golfer's elbow and to help them recover and thrive. See you in 2 weeks. Stay safe.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com